Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a mixed bag of a decision in another Alien Enemies Act case. In fact, a very large one involving, for now, a putative class. Remember, that's something that the Supreme Court has approved, that judges, district court judges, can recognize putative classes without going through all the steps and obstacles that's somewhat time consuming, can recognize instead a putative class, have some preliminary order. For example, don't do what you're planning to do, administration, extend to them, freeze the linebackers, and then go forward and work out eventually. Is it a legitimate class under the federal rules of civil procedure? And are the claims well taken? Now, the decision here is by a Trump appointee, Judge John Holcomb. It is with respect to a putative, someone that the administration wants to deport, but whom they swept in, accusing him of being a member of the gang Tren de Aragua, and did not give him full due process. So he says, I applied for asylum and I went to my scheduled hearing where they ask you about questions to see if you merit an asylum claim, and boom, I was detained. And of course he had the telltale sign, which marks him incontrovertibly as a desperado member of Tren de Aragua. Tattoos. So because he had tattoos, they took him into custody, and at that point, he brought a lawsuit on his behalf and on behalf of others similarly situated. But essentially, it looks as if the order applies for now. It's just a temporary stay to most people from Venezuela in Los Angeles. That's, there are 350,000 in the country. LA is a big source of them. And so that really is a big group who for now can't be deported. Here's the bad part, and it normally could have been quite bad, I think, given the overall posture of where these cases are in the country. It probably doesn't matter all that much. But Holcomb found that it was not to him, not to the judiciary, to second guess the president, the administration, about whether the Alien Enemies Act is properly invoked, whether the emergency powers that Trump claims he has under the Alien Enemies Act is something for judicial review. Court after court after court, and I think really fairly read the United States Supreme Court, which made it clear in a 7-2 decision that and arguably even in a 9-0 decision, that the terms construction of the Alien Enemies Act is something for the judiciary. And Holcomb really trimmed back on that, it seems to me. He said that the judiciary, and then above him, Ninth Circuit and Supreme Court, would rule whether the predicates for Holcomb's asylum claim are established, for what it's going to be like for him if he's returned to Venezuela. Will he face persecution? Is he right now under an imminent threat of removal? So that is something that Holcomb insists is his to adjudicate, and the U.S. in its, it's really, things are happening within the Department of Justice, and I think the bottom line is a kind of inconsistency now. But Holcomb, the sort of bad DOJ from a couple weeks ago, Holcomb said, how much process are you going to give him? How much time? How much notice? And the DOJ lawyer said, We can't tell you. We won't tell you. So, and that's the kind of stance they'd been taking in cases like Abrego Garcia, and still are in some, and yet in others are being far more cooperative. For example, the Chris Dunn case that I did another YouTube on that you can find now, where Marco Rubio personally is going to try, the U.S. says, to comply with the order. But that part said for the judge, but this other big part, did he properly invoke the Alien Enemies Act, is not for the judiciary to determine. Now, in the overall scheme of things, that assertion by the department, by the administration, which this judge has validated, is, to me, a bigger, more important question than the construction even of the Alien Enemies Act, because what it would do is validate this overall effort in this context, to be sure, but there's no reason that the Alien Enemies Act is special here. If Trump can use this to say, it's an emergency in this country, and I've got to deport anybody I want, or at least anyone who Marco Rubio says we need to, and courts, you can't look at it. Man, oh man, that is sort of the, 2/3 down the road to authoritarian rule, because it cuts the courts out. So in that sense, Holcomb's, as of now, outlying decision is very problematic. However, this very issue is now really developing all over the country. Now, to be sure, we've been doing this for over a month, but most of what's happening is still in the preliminary stages of emergency dockets and temporary relief. Nevertheless, we have many courts now, higher courts, and the U.S. Supreme Court, I think, in the proper interpretation of its decision to say, we're not going to defer to the administration, the term under the Alien Enemies Act, or terms that they're relying on to say emergency, that's for the judiciary to determine, not for the administration to do in an unreviewable way. So while this ruling is A, the first of its kind, and B, very worrisome in the broader landscape of judicial review and the ability of the courts to push back on the administration, it's going to be, and no matter what he ruled, it would have been something that would go up here to the Ninth Circuit and then to the Supreme Court. We are already at a high enough level. Perhaps there was some chance with zero dissent that the Supreme Court wouldn't even take the issue, would consider it all decided. But I think that was remote, because they've got to take some of these cases, and whatever they do take will likely involve this invocation of outsized executive authority. So a worrisome ruling by the judge in part, the other part fine. But one that I think you can almost say is no harm, no foul, in the sense that it was already going to be worked out, and still will already be worked out by higher courts, and those determinations will prevail for this all-important issue of, are the courts involved? Do we get judicial review? Or can Trump and the administration just preempt it, really stiff-arm it, with the mere invocation of the word emergency? Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.